Hello and welcome to the show. Now, when it comes to building a car in Forza 5 for the lower classes, we're talking sort of C class and B class here, you're often going to have to make compromises with the parts that you use to simply keep it in the class. And the big sort of PI gaining parts, race tyres, race weight reduction, you want to have them on your car. You want to have as good a tyres as possible, and you want the car to be as light as possible. But you can't always have all the parts on the car, and of course keeping it within the PI. Certainly on Forza 4 my philosophy was stick race tyres on it and it would be pretty good, and it seemed to work for a lot of the cars I built on there. I had a lot more struggles with Forza 5 when it came to building vehicles, so I set out today to have an investigation in to see how various different parts, the tyres, the weight and the tyre width improvements would affect the vehicles. Now, we're going to start with three very different vehicles for this test. We have the Dodge Coronet, a big, heavy American muscle car. We have the Renault Megane, a front-wheel drive hot hatch, and the Audi TT, a four-wheel drive sports car. About three different vehicles you couldn't get. Each of these cars have their own problems when it comes to the handling department. The Dodge, admittedly very fast in a straight line, but not particularly good through the turns. It has quite a lot of understeer on the way into the corner, a lot of oversteer on the way out of a corner, and as you can see, wibbles and wobbles its way around a track. It's, a little bit of a difficult car to drive, and of course the brakes aren't particularly good. The Megane is a pretty good car to drive from standard, I have to say. Being a front-wheel drive vehicle, yes, you do get a little bit of understeer when pushed very, very hard, but it is quite a good handling vehicle. However, it doesn't really have the power. It's a little bit sluggish on the acceleration. And the Audi TT, well, four-wheel drive system means it has very, very good traction, decently quick car as well. But it is a little bit understeery with that four-wheel drive, and the brakes aren't quite as good as I would like. And the track we're using for this test, the Catalonia National Circuit. A good circuit, this one, for testing cars. It has a good mixture. High, medium, slow-speed corners, a couple of long straights. It's got something for all eventualities on this track, which is why I often like using this as a testing circuit. Now, each car was given 5 laps to set their various time. First, all of the cars, of course, were driven standard. First of the big upgrades were the race tyres. Of course, the race tyres are going to improve the car in pretty much every area. When it comes to a lap, you're going to have better traction. Admittedly, with the Audi TT that we have here, the traction isn't a real issue. The car being four-wheel drive, the traction isn't a huge problem. So the race tyres don't make a massive... They will make a bit of a difference, but they don't make as massive a difference on this car. Where it does make the difference on the TT is the corners. Of course, we're going to have a lot more grip. We're going to be able to carry more corner speed. The Audi doesn't understeer anywhere near as much as it did when it was driven standard. Also, it should improve the braking with better tyres. We should be able to stop that a little bit quicker, and that was another area that the Audi did struggle on. I think maybe the Audi's a little bit heavy, but it's not massively. I don't know why it just didn't impress me with the braking force. But of course, yeah, the racing tyres are going to improve that, and the Audi was much more fun to drive, much easier to drive with the race tyres on the car, and it was much quicker going around a lap of this track. When we come to the Megane, the race tyres, well, they didn't really make as larger a difference as perhaps you might expect. I think the reason for that being is that while, yes, it does give the car a little bit more traction, well, the main problem a front-wheel drive car is going to have sort of traction-wise is off the line. Well, we're doing flying laps here. So getting the car off the line, it's kind of irrelevant for the Megane, and it's not got enough power to be spinning the wheels up massively through these corners. It's not such a ludicrously overpowered front-wheel drive car that it's spinning the wheels up through these turns anyway. So having the race tyres doesn't make really a difference to the Megane on the traction side. Of course, yes, it is going to be able to carry that little bit more corner speed, but it can carry decent corner speed from standard. It wasn't having too much of a problem with the handling, and the brakes weren't too shabby either. A little bit scary on the brakes. It does kind of dive a little bit, and the rear end likes to wiggle around, which is a little bit disconcerting the first time it does it. But yeah, it's a fairly decent overall car to begin with. The Megane, so the race tyres didn't make a huge difference. Whereas the Dodge, well, it's a very different story. Of course, to begin with, the Dodge is a pain to get through the turns. Put on the race tyres, and of course it's going to massively improve. I mean, this is the oldest car here by quite a long way. We'll have the oldest tyres by a mile. The race tyres, of course, have a profound effect on the Dodge. We've got much better handling through the turns. The understeer is an awful lot less. I mean, it does still understeer a little bit. I mean, the suspension's still running standard suspension, so it's still wobbly. But yeah, the understeer, it's far less through the turns. The oversteer is a lot more manageable. You can put the power down out of the turns. We still slide. Yes, it's still a 400 horsepower muscle car. It will still slide, but it's not very much. It's a hell of a lot easier to drive, and you know, that's what you would expect when it comes to sticking race tyres on a muscle car. But of course, there is another thing to take into consideration, and that is the PI gain that you get from these parts. The Audi TT, it goes a couple of seconds quicker. It does add 56 odd PI. The Megane only goes a second quicker, and that's quite a big PI gain for not a huge amount of time, and that's to do with the fact that the Megane wasn't really struggling with handling to begin with. At least that's what I think. The Dodge Coronet, well, it goes some 4 seconds quicker, but it is almost an entire class in PI gain. Yeah, it's not surprising to see that bigger a time difference for the Dodge, let's be honest. Now, the next upgrade that I was going to do on the cars was tyre widths. Now, this is kind of the route that I've been going down more lately. After building a bunch of crappy cars to begin with on Forza 5, recently I've kind of been getting the hang a little bit with building vehicles, and I think at least it was to do with tyre widths as opposed to me just picking better vehicles and so on. So I was interested to see how these would affect some of the cars. Of course, I tend to drive muscle cars that have huge tyre width gains, whereas this Audi here, tyres don't, it only gains, I think it goes from 245s to 265s. That's not a particularly big gain on both front and rear tyres, and they're still not the largest of tyres, shall we say. So yeah, the Audi is a little bit better to drive with these bigger tyres. There's a little bit less understeer through the corners, and maybe a fraction better on the brakes. It's not a huge difference in lap time and in driving, but the PI gain is also pretty small. And again, the same goes for the Megane. When you take this car around here with the upgraded tyres, yeah, there's a little bit less understeer from the car. You can be a fraction faster through the corners, but it doesn't really change a huge amount on this car. And again, much like with the race tyres, the Megane was pretty good handling to begin with. So having these better tyres, sure, you can carry a little bit more speed, but it's not solving the main problem I had with the car, which was just that little bit, that lack of speed, that lack of acceleration out of the vehicle. But then again, the PI gain for this car was also pretty tiny for having the tyre widths. And then we go to the Dodge. These things can have huge rear tyres, 345s on the back of the Coronet, and you can get that on most of the muscle cars in Forza 5. I think it's 295s or something like that on the front wheels. So it's got bigger tyres on the front than the Audi has on the rear, and the Megane has on the whole car. Is huge tyres on this car. And even though they're still the standard tyres, it is a hell of a lot nicer to drive. The traction is perhaps the most significant thing on this vehicle. It now barely oversteers. If anything, I think it oversteers a little bit less running these tyres than it does running the race tyres. Just having this size of tyre on the rear. Yes, you can still slide it, but it really doesn't like it. The understeer isn't quite as cured, if you like. It is still a bit understeery through the turn, so you still have to really make sure you get the car slowed down, and you are wasting a bit of time with the understeer. But by having that much better traction from this car, you can use the power of the Dodge quite easily. A little scary going through this fast chicane, but yeah, the Dodge, it makes a very big improvement on the Dodge. For only 15 PI gain, we get almost 2 seconds quicker for the Coronet. The other cars, it doesn't make such a big difference on. The Audi, it's about a second gain, but that is only for a small amount of PI. There's 11 PI for that one. The Megane is 6 PI for about half a second gain on that particular car. Don't worry, I'll come to the end and I'll show all the PI gain. I'll do proper maths at the end. But we move on next to the race weight reduction. Again, this is something that, of course, you're going to be wanting to have on your car because it's improving all aspects of the vehicle. A lighter car means that it can accelerate faster. It means that it can go through the corners better, there's less weight to move around, and of course under braking as well, having less car to stop doesn't require as much energy and so on. So putting the weight reduction on the Audi, yeah, we should get a better to drive car, and sure enough, it is a much more lively vehicle. The brakes are much sharper, it'll get stopped much quicker. The understeer isn't as much of a problem. It is still an issue with the TT. You still got to, of course, be careful with the Audi. But on the whole, yeah, it improved every aspect of the car, as you would expect it would. But of course, again, we have a decent size sort of PI gain for these vehicles, sticking on the full-on weight reduction. Now, when it comes to the Megane, this was perhaps the most dramatic change for the Renault, because now that the car is much lighter, we've got that little bit more acceleration. The power-to-weight ratio is better in the Megane, and now we can start to have a bit of fun with the car, use the vehicle a little bit more, and the handling is still a decent handling car. All of these vehicles, they've now got the standard tyres and standard tyre widths back on them. The Megane was still good handling through the corners. I still didn't have massive problems with understeer. Yes, it will understeer, of course, it'll understeer a little bit being a front-wheel drive car, but I didn't have huge understeer problems. I wasn't there shouting I wanted new tyres on the car. It didn't have that, and of course we don't have the problem with it spinning the wheels up through the corners. It's now just a faster car. We've got better acceleration out of the corners and in between turns and so on. We're better on the brakes. And it's just a more pleasant vehicle to drive. Yes, it is a sizable PI gain, of course it's going to be on these vehicles, but it makes the car a hell of a lot faster. And then we move on to the Dodge. Yes, the Dodge is the heaviest vehicle here, and you can take off quite a lot of weight on the car. However, it doesn't really solve the Dodge's problems, shall we say. Yes, it makes it quicker on the acceleration front. Yes, it makes the understeer a little bit less. The problem is it makes the oversteer a lot worse. You have a lot more sideways moments with the Dodge when you take the weight off the car. See, with the race tyres, you're giving the rear tyres a lot more grip. With the tyre width, you've got huge rear tyres on here. So again, you're increasing the rear tyre grip. When you're taking the weight off the car, you're not really increasing the rear tyres grip by enough, if you like. It makes it very lively, incredibly lively, and it will slide around a lot. Over the course of the lap, of course, it's going to still be quicker. It's so much faster accelerating, and you do get it turned into the corners better. Putting the power down is a bit of a faff, though, with the Coronet. And sure enough, that can be seen in the times. The Audi goes just over 3 seconds quicker with the race weight reduction, but it is a very big PI gain for the car. The Megane, it's the biggest difference we made to the Megane's time. We're talking about 2.5 seconds here for, again, another sizable PI gain. The Dodge is actually the smallest difference in lap times. The only time the Dodge had the smallest difference in lap times, 2.5 seconds again for the Dodge. It was quite a difficult car to drive with that weight reduction thing. But now comes the important scientific bit. How do these parts compare when you base it purely on the time gain per individual PI point? And well, when you look at it like that, the tyre widths win by quite a margin, I have to say. I mean, the Dodge Coronet, you're looking at 0.1 of a second per single PI point. That is a big time gain. That is a big lap time gain on that vehicle. And even the Megane and the Audi TT, cars that you don't have huge tyre widths on them vehicles. I'm not so surprised by the Dodge in that, because you have ridiculous tyres when you're finished with it. The TT and the Megane, you don't get these ludicrous tyre widths, but it's still big lap time gains per the PI points, because it was only 6 PI for the Megane, putting it to maximum tyre width, but it still made half a second a lap difference. The tyre widths are so important, is what that this is saying to me. As far as the race weight and the race tyres, well, the weight wins, but it's only marginal. It's only marginal on that one between all of these vehicles. That's perhaps not massively surprising. Certainly, the Megane fared quite well with the race weight, and a lot of it's probably going to come down to perhaps your personal driving style and the car itself that you start with. I would much more likely have the Megane with tyre widths and race weight reduction, and perhaps ignore the race tyres, or go with sport tyres and so on. Of course, these cars were not built to a specific class. These cars were built just to test the parts on their own, if you like. And of course, when you're sticking on other parts, you will have you'll have gradients. Perhaps you might have sport rate reduction and sport tires and so on and so forth. There's lots and lots of different combinations that you can have. But what I am getting from this is certainly tyre width is definitely something you're going to want to put on. You're going to want to have maximum tyre width you can, as it adds decent lap time without too much PI, and perhaps the actual sort of quality of the tyre is slightly less important. Go for less weight, and then go for whatever other tyres or whatever tyres you can fit on the car to keep it within the class. That would be my recommendations for when it comes to modifying cars. I hope you guys have found this video useful, certainly interesting for me, finding out the actual sort of scientific numbers for the differences with these parts. But that is it from me. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.